The auction yard smelled of smoke, sweat, and fear as the crowd gathered around the trembling man dragged forward in chains, his face bruised from days without mercy, his eyes wild from the beatings whispered to have broken stronger spirits. And though every mouth around him curled with disgust, there was a spark buried inside him that refused to die, a spark she saw the moment she stepped into the dusty clearing and heard the jeers calling him savage, as if that label alone stripped him of humanity. The auctioneer smirked when he saw her, a refined stranger among hardened traders, and barked about the man's reputation, how he'd fought, resisted, and survived what should have killed him, how he was dangerous and worthless. Nothing more than a lesson in obedience, prompting the overseer to raise a whip to demonstrate the beast's lack of compliance. But before the lash could land, her voice cut through the chaos, sharp, fierce, commanding, "Don't hurt him! I'll buy him." And the yard fell silent in disbelief as she walked forward, her boots crunching against the dirt, her eyes locked on the prisoner whose body quivered not from fear, but from the painful hope flickering awake inside him. A murmured ripple of laughter spread as onlookers ridiculed her pity, but she ignored them, handing over a pouch heavier than the price demanded, insisting the chains be removed immediately. And the guard scoffed but obeyed, releasing the metal bites from his wrists. For a moment he didn't move, as though freedom itself were another trick meant to break him, until she offered her hand, gentle, steady, whispering that she saw a man worth saving where others only saw an animal, a statement that confused him more than any punishment ever had. And he followed her away from the yard, limping but silent, haunted eyes darting around as if danger would strike again at any moment. She brought him not to a cage or a stable, but to a modest cabin nestled among whispering trees, where she cleaned his wounds, fed him warm stew, and spoke softly of second chances. And though he didn't speak for days, suspicion carved into the lines of his expression, his stare always scanning exits, her patience never cracked. Offering blankets, giving space, allowing him to sit outside and feel the wind without being struck for existing. Slowly, painfully, he began to trust, first by returning her utensils, then by whispering thank you in a voice rough as broken gravel, and eventually by confessing what shaped him, betrayal, loss, forced violence, and she listened, never flinching, never recoiling, teaching him that confession wasn't weakness but the first step toward strength. Soon she put tools in his hands instead of chains, guiding him to build fences, chop wood, repair the cabin's porch, and each task repaired a portion of himself, until his posture straightened, his eyes lifted, and smiles, small but real, began to surface. Yet freedom has a way of attracting the envy of those who refuse to believe monsters could become men, and one night, the overseer and his drunken gang burst through the trees, torches blazing, shouting that the savage belonged back in chains, calling him property trash, a threat to their order. And though old instinct told him to run, he stood his ground, shielding the woman who saved him behind his broad shoulders, something primal and noble igniting within him, the promise of protection anchored not by ownership but by gratitude. The attackers sneered, mocking the notion of redemption, swinging clubs and chains, but he fought back not like a beast, but like a warrior with purpose. Years of forced brutality honed into precise defense, disarming his foes with swift movements, refusing to kill even when he easily could, because she taught him value, not just of life but of choice. And in the end, with groans scattered through the mud, the mob retreated, humiliated by the animal's self-control, leaving him breathless, bruised, and shaking from the adrenaline he thought he'd buried forever. She rushed to his side, hands trembling as she checked his injuries, whispering praise for his restraint. And when tears slipped from his eyes, tears he thought he'd lost the ability to shed, she held him without judgment, reminding him that strength was not in fists but in refusing to become what others expected. By dawn, rumors swirled across the region that the savage had fought like a hero, sparing those who sought to ruin him, and slowly, villagers approached the cabin with curiosity, offering apologies, bread, blankets, timid smiles, and though suspicion lingered like fog, acceptance seeped through layer by layer, and within months, he became their protector, fixing roofs, helping elders harvest, and carrying children on his shoulders, laughter echoing where silence once ruled. Eventually, others who'd been labeled lost causes sought refuge at the cabin, and she welcomed them too, forming a haven for the broken, teaching them that the world's cruelest chains were not metal but shame, and he stood proudly among them, a living testament that transformation was possible. She watched him grow into a leader with gentle power, and the villagers began calling him something new. Not savage, but guardian, because names, she always said, were reflections, not sentences. One quiet evening under a crimson sky, he asked her why she saved him when everyone else saw a monster. And she answered simply, "Because I know what people become when someone refuses to give up on them," leaving him speechless with gratitude deeper than words. The cabin grew into a community, a sanctuary of second chances, and whenever outsiders visited, fearful of the monstrous man and their cautionary tales, they instead found a respected figure who taught compassion with actions rather than speeches, whose scars became symbols of survival, not shame, on the anniversary of his freedom. Villagers gathered with torches not to hunt but to celebrate, praising the woman who looked past brokenness and the man who rebuilt himself from fragments. And as music filled the night, he addressed the crowd, voice strong and resonant, urging them to never judge souls by wounds, because even the fiercest hearts can be softened with kindness. Later, sitting alone by the fire, he stared at his reflection in the polished metal she'd gifted him, seeing not the hollow-eyed creature the world had named savage, but the man she always believed he could be, and with a slow nod he vowed to pay that gift forward forever. Life is not defined by the names others give you, but by the names you earn, and in the end, the only monsters in this world are those who believe others cannot change. So if you're listening to this story now, remember your scars are chapters, not endings, and your value is not measured by the voices that tried to break you. If you believe every person deserves a chance to rise, if stories like this remind you that kindness can rewrite destiny, then support this channel, share this video, subscribe for more powerful tales of redemption and courage, because somewhere out there, someone needs this story today. You could be the one who helps them see their worth. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community of hearts stronger together.